Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got such a fun project for you today. I was in an antique store months ago and I found a little stack of old Sunbonnet Sues. And so I wanted to show you how to use these in a quilt and to take this good old Sue into a new modern quilt. So let's take a look at this quilt behind me. So I just had a little stack of these, and as I got to looking at them, some of them didn't have feet, and some of them didn't have arms, and some of them didn't have their embroidery finished. And so I took a look at the blocks, and I realized that I would never have a really big quilt out of these few blocks that I had. So I finished them up, and I made a filler block. So I'm going to show you how to do this with all your old blocks so that you too can make quilts from these treasures that we find in antique stores. So to make this quilt, you're going to need one packet of 5-inch squares, and we're really just making 8 blocks. So it's not a ton of squares, but when I saw this line, Garden Party by Whistler Studios, I knew it was the line to bring in my Sunbonnet Sues and that it would all go together and be so cute. So you're going to need one pack of 5-inch squares. You're going to need some background fabric, about a ½ yard. Our accent, which is just the tiny center of our flower block, is a 1/4 yard. Our border is a 4-inch border, and you'll need about 5/8 of a yard for that. And on your backing, you're going to need 3 yards of a 45 with a horizontal seam. So it's also super helpful with what I'm doing to have a 10-inch ruler, because that's what I use to measure out my blocks. And I knew that I wanted my end block, my secondary block, to come out the same size. And then it's also helpful if you're going to make your own Sunbonnet Sues, you'll need a little fusible, or you can needle turn them as well. So I had a stack of Sunbonnet Sues that just looked like this. They're on this really old muslin. I didn't worry about that at all. And I wanted these to come out a certain size. And so I took my Sunbonnet Sues that I got and I squared them up. So I had to look at what size I could get, because when you buy antique blocks, they're all different sizes. And so I took my 10-inch ruler and I thought, if I can make a block 10 inches, then on this girl right here, you know, I have enough to sew a seam and not catch her feet, and enough to sew her hat and not catch her hat. Now this feels a little scary, but just if you'll mark your, you know, right here on our ruler, it has this center mark. So just eyeball it, make sure that you're about the same distance top to bottom and side to side, and then you're just going to square them up. And so I just, you know, this fabric is so thin and fine, it just cuts so easily. So we're just going to go ahead and square this up. And so look at her, doesn't she look, she's all pretty now, she's all straightened up and pretty. And so then I knew I needed a 10-inch block to go in between. So as I started looking at different ideas for 10-inch blocks, I got this line in to sew with, and let me just show you the back here. So this is the back of the quilt, and this little block right here, it just kind of stole my heart, and I wanted to make a little flower block like it to go in between. So what we're going to do to make that is we are going to grab our little blocks, and I tried to keep my flower colors together. So like these are all reds, you know, these are all greens, yellows, and so forth. And so these flowers are really simple to make. You're going to need 1.5 inch squares, and then for your yellow center, you're going to need 2-inch squares. So I would just cut a 2-inch strip and then just subcut those into little 2-inch squares. So when we make our square, this is what we're doing. We're snowballing 3 corners with a 1.5 inch background square, and then our middle flower center is a 2-inch square. So let's go ahead and put one of those together. I have 3 of these ready to go. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to lay my little 1.5 inch squares right here in the corners. And you're just going to do 1, 2, 3 in a row. So you're going to go around the square and do these like this. And we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we'll just go corner to corner diagonally. And you can draw a line if you want. I will be using my diagonal seam tape. And so I'm going to start here. And I'm just going to line it up with that diagonal seam tape right in the center and go straight across. I'm going to pull this out a little bit and turn it. I'm not clipping my threads at this point because I'm going to have to trim all of these in a minute. So again, just straight across, and then a third time. And you're going to do this to all 4 of yours, and then we're going to add that yellow flower center. And I just wanted the yellow flower, the yellow center. I just thought it would be so pretty. And so again, we're going to sew diagonally corner to corner. All right, so we're just going to sew straight across. All right, so now we have these little squares with all these little pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip these off. You can use your rotary cutter or a scissor, whatever you'd like. I'm just going to go ahead and scissor cut these. Little old school here. Well, I'm using an antique block. I guess I could be old school, right? I'm going to clip these threads in between. And then I've got my yellow one here. And then we're going to press these out. Just like this. And then we are going to put these together like a 4-patch. So I have these ones already done. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my yellows to the center. And I'm just going to take a look at it and make sure I like the placement. I like where it's going. And I'm just going to sew these together like a 4-patch. So I'll line these 2 up here. And I will just sew and chain piece these straight along the side, 1/4 of an inch, and we're just going to go right along the edge. And you kind of want to try to make sure that your little yellow, where your yellow comes together, that it matches up. And then we're going to go ahead and sew these as well. And I'm making sure that my little yellow matches up. And then I'll check my white as well. There we go. Now we'll open these up and make sure that all of our yellows are to the center. And they are, so we'll fold this on top of each other and sew down this side. So again, make sure your white corners are lined up and match. You can feel that with your finger. And then in the center, you just want one seam to go one way and one the other, so they're nice and nested. And then you come down here. All right. So we've got this together. Look how cute this is. Isn't that darling? All right, let's press it. So we've got it all pressed out here. So nice. And then I go to line it up with my girl. Look it's just a little bit small. It's just a little bit short. And I'm thinking in my mind it should be 10 inches, but I can't, you can't make something larger. So here's what I decided to do. I took my 1.5 inch strip and I made a border on 2 sides. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me some wiggle room. So we're going to sew this on here. And you can measure this out. Let me see what this measures. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.5. And you can cut it at 9.5. I'm just going to sew mine and then trim it off because I'm going to be squaring this whole block one more time. And so I'm not worried about it being perfect. And a lot of times, I don't know if this happens to you, but a lot of times my little corners, when I put them on, they'll kind of wing out. So this is going to take care of that problem as well. All right, so now I'm going to press this little edge back. There we go. And now I'm going to add this piece on this side. If it fits, it's going to be a little short, so I'm going to get another strip. And I'm going to trim off my selvage edge right here. And then I'm just going to sew this down. Now, what I did, once I realized that I had to do this, I just chain pieced this and did all my blocks at once. Once I realized that my block wasn't quite the right size. And when you're dealing with antique blocks, you never know what you're going to get. So we're just going to sew this right down the side. All right, and then we're going to trim this off right here. And then we're going to press this open. So this is the great equalizer. You know, the sashing is the great equalizer. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out here, and I'm going to take my 10-inch block. So now I'm ready to trim this, and I'm going to line it up right in this corner, right here. Make sure this lines up just nice and snug into that corner. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this off out here. My block is now 10 inches. And I'm actually going to clean up these little corners on the block here. So see how this sticks out just a tiny little hair? I'm just going to trim that up and clean this one up as well. So we set these together just like this. We've got a sash on the right-hand side and the bottom. Because it's now 10 inches, it matches up exactly with our Sunbonnet Sue. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, 2 Sunbonnet Sues and 2 flower blocks. We put the whole quilt together. Now because it's sashed on this side has what appears to be a little inner border as well as the bottom. And so we have to add an inner border to balance it over here. So we've got a little 1.5 inch inner border on this side and across the top. And then we put a nice 4-inch border around the outside edge. The quilting pattern we use is curly twirly flowers, and it makes a quilt that's about 46 by 46. Now, this is dependent entirely upon how many antique blocks you have and you know how many you're going to make. We did 8 of each. So this is a 16 block quilt. We did 8 flowers and we had 8 Sunbonnet Sues, and I did have to do some major repair to get her looking so cute. But I wanted to tell you that if any of you want to make your own Sunbonnet Sues, she doesn't have to be old, we're including a free printable for you so you can make your own Sunbonnet Sue. And to be honest, there were some pieces of the old fabric left, and I took that old fabric and I made a Sunbonnet Sue just out of the fabric that I had right here that I got. So this is new fabric. I used iron-on applique, so it's I used the fusible on this, and then I sewed around the pieces on this with black thread because they used black thread, and I did it on a large just an applique stitch, and I think it looks hand done. It looks really good, and so I'm super excited about how she came out. She's new, but she's still old, and I just think it's really fun. I so enjoyed bringing out my old Sunbonnet Sue antique blocks and finding a wonderful use for them. It got them out of the cupboard, out from under the bed, out of that box that your grandmother saved them in, and we made a quilt with them. So I'd love to see what you guys do with your old blocks. If you do, be sure and share them, and we hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Sunbonnet Sue quilt from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Hey everybody! Every week I give you a new idea, and we are almost 1 million quilters strong. So join us every Friday for a new tutorial, and if you haven't clicked or subscribed, make sure you do that today. See you on Friday.